Hi, welcome to this iOS video. Today I'm going to talk about Picker View. Picker View is essentially a very simple version of a multi-item select. You can see what one of these looks like. It looks like a big Rolodex kind of view that we can select among multiple options. A picker view can have a single wheel, it can have multiple wheels, but the important things about picker views are that they have a delegate and a data source. Now, the word delegate is used in a couple of different ways in object-oriented programming, but I want to talk about the specific use of a delegate in Objective-C, and we're going to spend a lot of time on this in the next unit. When we talk about delegation and target action and some of these other patterns, design patterns that we use in Objective-C. Now, I say that the picker view has a delegate and a data source. Now, first of all, I've got a great big label here with nothing in it, and this has got a 37-point font. I've also got a picker view. In a picker view, we drag out from the controls like everything else. The picker view is located here, and we drag it out to here, and we can set its width, but its height, its default height is set for us. Now, it's showing us a picture of a picker view that this is not the underlying data of this picker view, but we need to right-click the picker view and drag the delegate and the data source outlet of the picker view to Files Owner. And then in Files Owner, which is the view controller, we need to adopt two protocols, UIPicker View Data Source and UIPicker View Delegate, and they're shown here. And we adopt a protocol by enclosing it in these angle brackets. Now we can adopt multiple protocols by separating them with a comma, as we've done here. Now, these protocols contain method declarations that the delegate of the picker view will fill in. The delegate of this picker view is this view controller. So these methods, some are required, most are optional, but we need to, for this picker view, we need to define the activity of these methods. Now, how do we know what these methods are? Well, if we command click one of these, we'll see what these methods are. We can see that the data source protocol has two required methods. The picker view needs to know the number of components in the picker view and return that as an integer. And it also needs to know the number of rows in each component and return that as an integer. Now, NS integer, don't worry about. We'll talk about that later. NS integer is really just an alias to integer. So we need to return these. So we need to include these two functions. They are required. And then in the delegate, the important ones are, let's see, yes, picker view title for row for component, and picker view did select row in component. So now if we go back to our implementation, the first thing we've done is we've set up an array called colors, and we've also got an outlet to a label, that great big label at the top of our design, and I'm calling it chosen. And of course we've wired the chosen label up. So now my colors is just lazily instantiated here, and I've got red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, nil, and this is an array. And of course we have to terminate an NS array declaration by nil. And then we return colors. Now here is my number of components in picker view, and here the components is the number of wheels in the picker. So I'm returning 1. I only want 1. Then the number of rows in each component, I'm returning the count of this colors array. I could send the count message. That would be the same as calling the getter on the count property, but I can just use the property here. For title for row in component, I'm returning the object at index row out of the colors array. And for did select row in component, I'm getting that object at index row out of the colors array and assigning it to the text property of self.chosen, which is the label. So when I run this, when I select something in the picker view, it will populate the label with the indexed element of our NS array corresponding to the chosen element in this picker view component. So let's see how it works. Remember that picker views, like a lot of other views in iOS programming, in iPhone programming, require a delegate and a data source. And I know right now that there probably is some confusion as to how these delegates work. Don't worry about that. We'll cover that in great detail in the next unit. So now when I select, for instance, yellow, it says yellow. I can sort of randomly do this, and when it reaches the position where it says violet, that's fine. I can go back up to red. Maybe blue is nice. And this is how picker views work. The reason I introduce picker views now is because the data source of a picker view component is almost always either an array or a mutable array. We've talked about arrays and mutable arrays, and hopefully you have a better understanding of those at this point. But in our story so far, so to speak, we've kind of had a bland sort of user interface. We put the elements of an array one at a time in a label. We put the elements of a mutable array into a text view, but it's sort of bland. I wanted to show you a picker view to give you another option early on to show you how we populate it with the elements of an array and how the delegate and the data source work. Thank you very much.